Whether in the public or nonprofit sector, assistance programs are an essential aspect of society. For those in poverty, they protect against extreme poverty. For everyone else, they serve as a safety net we hope we'll never need.
Well, I think it's important to begin by saying I think that most of the people in the United States, including, of course, people in Michigan and Grand Traverse County, want to provide help for people who really need it. That's the bottom line. They don't get more than what they're eligible for, but certainly they don't get less than what they're eligible for.
A crisis can happen to anyone, so it's important to understand how our aid system works. In this show, we'll look at assistance programs across our region and determine whether they're effective or not. Let's start with the Michigan Department of Human Service, DHS. It's a state-run agency that distributes cash and food assistance. Since applying for DHS is a prerequisite for most nonprofit aid agencies, it's the first step for Michiganders looking for help.
I'm a single mom. I have 4 adult children, one of whom is autistic and lives with me.
Chris raised her 3 children on low income. She used to have a full-time teaching job, but now she can only do private lessons.
In the commute in the middle of the winter, I was in an auto accident and sustained a closed head injury. After the accident, I was not able to manage a full classroom. I wasn't able to hold the lesson plan in my head. I ended up being without work and having to regroup, so I went on welfare. Navigating the system was a really difficult thing. It felt adversarial.
Chris isn't alone in that assessment. Mary Maroy has 39 years experience in DHS.
The whole system and the whole formula for people getting cash assistance was developed in 1964. It has never been changed since that period of time. At that time, it was expected that you would spend 30% of your income on food. Nobody spends 30% of their income on food anymore, except maybe a college student. You spend 30% of your income on housing. And that formula also never considered any assistance for health care or child care or transportation. We have developed insurmountable hoops that people have to go through in order to be eligible for assistance. There have been some policy decisions that have been made that make it very, very difficult for people to get help. Pretty much we've gone to a system where people have to apply online, so they have to have access to a computer.
Before we look at that, a disclaimer. I'm no passive observer in this process. I hold a Michigan Bridge card for food assistance, and my experience with the online application has been interesting. It basically forgot my password. So I entered it and then it logged me out because I had to go do something else. Later that day I entered it again and it wouldn't let me in. I filmed myself trying to get back into my account and I found a fun little quirk with the attempt tracker. You have attempted 2 out of 5 incorrect attempts. That was the first time I typed it in. Interesting. Okay, it just skipped from 3 to 5. You have tried 2 out of 5 times. You have tried 4 out of 5 times.
Geez.
You have tried 1 out of 5 times. Because when your family is in dire need of assistance, it's comforting to use a program that can't count numerically. And once you're in, I hope you like error screens and PIN codes. This is actual footage from a sample application I created. Every other screen is error or PIN codes.
You know, I really don't know, but I do know that it's not the Department of Human Services that runs that website. There's an Office of Technology at the state level. But, you know, it's just one more example. You probably have got some techie skills. Imagine never having used a computer in many instances and all of a sudden being faced with all of that. You know, it's a living nightmare.
Never used a computer. I don't know why that would be the case, unless of course computer usage and connectivity are directly tied to household income.
A lot of folks may have a phone that's capable of going online, but it's really hard to use the applications and portals to services and benefits that are only available online anymore.
It isn't user-friendly. We need to make things user-friendly, but it isn't just having access to the computer. It is understanding the program. A few weeks ago, I had a family member who required long-term care in a nursing home. I helped my family members fill out a Medicaid application for them, and after 39 years of experience, it was almost impossible for me to do.
How much time did it take you to fill out all this?
Oh, hours and hours.
Well, it's a 30-some page application to begin with.
It was a very complicated application. It was like a book.
Right.
Harder than filling out your income tax, the long form.
And it uses terms that are not necessarily terms that someone would know. The term asset to you can mean something completely different than it means to me. And a liquid asset could mean something totally different to you than it does to me. And so there's no definitions of the terms that are being used.
And it was like, how do I answer this question? Who are they talking about?
You may be thinking, what's the big deal? Sure, it's long and complicated, but it's just paperwork, right?
Someone who's looking through the situation through middle-class eyes are going to look at someone and ask, well, why aren't they making this progress at the same pace that I would make this progress? And there's a variety of reasons.
If I could sit down and just, sit down at a quiet desk with all the materials I needed around me and all the papers within reach, I could probably get through it pretty easily. Maybe 3 hours.
Here's the thing, it's never just paperwork. People aren't applying at DHS or a nonprofit agency because of how carefree their life has become. There's generally pressure involved. So every day you'd have to take your kids to and from school, you have to go to your teaching job, you'd have to do your private lessons.
So if I add on to that a substituting gig.
That sounds like a full day to me.
Oh yeah, it was. I'd come home and there was just, nothing left.
Right.
For the family. And it was juggling work.
Yeah.
Juggling housework, child care.
Part of the reason that they come to us for that assistance is just simply because they are running ragged, trying to get through all of the hoops that they have to get through. So generally there's some urgency, if you will, to get it taken care of.
When people are in crisis, there's a lot of things that happen to them physically and mentally. And having to work your way through the maze that human services have become is daunting.
We had a woman come in who has 2 children. She's homeless, so her children are not staying with her. She's working. Their children both have special needs. She's, trying to find some place to live, living in her vehicle, trying to find a place for her children, and trying to hang on to all these things. And now I've got to fill out all this paperwork, and I'm worried about my kids, and when am I going to get them back, and all those kinds of things. I mean, there's so many things that are going through their mind at that point. When you're under the stress of this crisis you've found yourself in that's causing you to apply for these things, you're struggling to just stay on track. You're barely scraping by. Your bills are more than the money you make, and so every day is a juggling act, and every day are all these decisions coming your way, and the stress of that really impacts one's health, one's ability to focus, one's ability to plan.
Like, it's not just one thing, it's like one thing on top of another on top of another.
I think that to think that they're in the situation they are because of one thing is a little simplistic.
Any of these things by themselves is manageable, but you put them all together, throw poverty on top of that.
Imagine taking a test you haven't studied for, only instead of a grade, it's your family's health, safety, and future that's at stake. That should give you an idea of the stress. It's one reason programs like HelpLink exist.
It takes a great deal of energy and motivation to get through it, and that's part of the support that we provide at HelpLink, that Navigators provide. We're making all of the agencies function more effectively. Not that they were functioning ineffectively, but we're really setting folks up to leverage the services that they need to get through. Even with help, some get kicked back. We miss a dotted I or a crossed T here or there. It's a lot of information, a lot of paperwork, a lot of gathering of information and pulling it together and filling out applications and so forth.
An unsuccessful attempt means a waste in time, energy, and money that a person in crisis cannot spare. So there's enormous pressure to get it right.
I just recently filled out some paperwork for some things of my own, personal, and it was 4 pages long. I combed through it over and over again to make sure I had everything sent it in, and I missed a space.
And it seems like missing a space on a form is something that people have done before, but it seems the stakes are a lot higher.
Yeah, when you're going to be evicted in 2 days and we miss miss an opportunity to help that person, it's important to get it right. At the end of the day, we were about to close, and one last phone call, we grabbed it at the last minute, and it was a mom who had an infant who was going to run out of formula that night. We were really thankful that we answered that call, and we picked up the phone and made a few calls, and we found a church that would purchase some formula for her.
Those are some extreme situations, but isn't that what our system is designed for?
And you might be thinking, okay, well, why did she wait till she was without formula? She'd been trying for days. You'll often hear people say, why do they wait till it's such a crisis before they reach out and get help? But the reality is, so many of our agencies are set up such that they have to be in complete crisis breakdown in order for them to be eligible for the services. Someone who says, I'm coming to you knowing that in the next 3 weeks this is going to happen and I know I'm going to need help, won't be eligible.
Like the time I went into mental health to ask for help, I knew a major depression was just around the corner. I explained my situation to the guy, and he says, "You're not sick enough to qualify for help."
We're forcing people to get to a desperate situation on the verge of being thrown on the streets before they're eligible for help.
Nonprofits usually have very limited funding. They can't help everyone, so they prioritize the most extreme cases.
We have to be good stewards of our taxpayer dollars. We have to be good stewards of our donor dollars. And so everyone's trying to ensure that we are helping the right people and giving them as much help as we can. Sometimes that sort of having to meet this eligibility standard and so on really causes us to have to turn away some folks. And I think it's folks trying to do the right thing.
That's not to say nonprofits are blind to the need for preventive services. In fact, some here in northern Michigan make it a priority.
Here at Bacon, we serve Benzie and northern Manistee County neighbors who have a need with food, clothing, financial assistance, and those could be a variety of things. If they simply need food or clothing, they can just come in the front door. Michigan Works is available in-house. We have a public computer lab. We offer an opportunity for neighbors to receive their GED or high school equivalency, English as a second language, computer literacy courses. We also have somebody here to aid people to fill out the applications, use the computer, things that all of us in business every day think are easy may not be so for some of our neighbors.
I think that we know that prevention is going to be a big part of the solution. And so we have folks who are in generational poverty that if we can work with children and get a better understanding around what education can do for you, that's going to be helpful.
The nonprofit aid agencies here in northern Michigan function fairly effectively overall, particularly in their cooperation with one another.
A lot of times organizations are already in-house or have time scheduled to be here, and we have space allocated for that purpose. A lot of times we just will make the phone call with the neighbor. They're not using gas and time to travel to distant communities. On a simple note, we participate monthly with the area collaborations. So we do know what's happening in our own community. We do know what's going on a little broader perspective.
You know, one of the places that really does this well is the Community Collaborative, and they meet once a month, and it is representatives from all of the agencies in the area. They, you know, bring awareness of services. They do discuss, you know, are there any gaps? Where can we collaborate? So it really is an organization or a collaboration that works.
All this helps, but the aid landscape is still difficult for the average person to navigate, particularly when they're under the stress and tight schedule that we talked about earlier.
A lot of the information is available on websites, and they may not have access to a computer. And even if they do, a lot of the agency websites are really sort of self-facing. And what I mean by that is they're not terribly user-friendly. They're written in terms that the agency itself understands. You have agencies that are open on this day, not on this day. You first have to go to this agency and get that note and get that letter of whatever before you go to this one. In addition, there's quite a lot of paperwork and information that an individual needs to bring with them. Income level, you know, if it's a housing issue, they need eviction notices. Most agencies require a denial by DHS before they'll look at the case.
So if a person was to like go through all the trouble to fill out the paperwork and like forgot to say their eviction notice or anything, it could be a huge problem for them.
Right.
To work your way through this maze, it's really tough nowadays, and it's for some it's like a full-time job.
And many people work normal jobs on top of that. Maybe they have young children to take care of. Maybe they live in a rural area and don't have a car. There are any number of barriers that make the maze even more difficult.
I think oftentimes at any agency, it's difficult to walk through the front door.
It makes you very vulnerable to have to ask for help in the first place, but then you have to bare your soul, then you have to give them all the proof, then you know.
Many of the folks that are coming here now are actually employed, and I think that our culture tells us if you're working, why should you need a place like this? But when you're making $9 an hour, you might need us. So you just have to get over that hump and understand that it's okay to ask for help. But that's hard, and it's a loss of dignity when you have to do that at times. So once they're through the front door, how can we make their experience a little bit easier, a little bit more friendly?
It's embarrassing to ask for help. That's why Bacon and many other aid agencies in our region do their best to preserve client dignity. Although, for one organization, that's somewhat less of a priority. Unfortunately, it's the one that everybody has to go through. Let's return to DHS.
First, when they terminated me, they sent me this letter, and it was like, I've done something bad. That was my first, oh no, you're no longer eligible, you will be terminated at such and such a date. And
you're trying to cheat the system or something.
Yeah, like I felt like, you know, they were scrutinizing me as far as, yeah, aha, I gotcha. I suppose it was just very factual, but there wasn't any, there would have been nice if there had been, you know, congratulations, you are no longer eligible because, you know, of your hard work.
Yeah.
I think there's a prevailing attitude that, you know, poor people need to be punished, shamed, blamed, you know, whatever. That if we do that, then we will get them out of poverty. And it just doesn't work.
This impression is evident as early as the application process.
Yeah, how do I describe my situation so it doesn't look like I'm trying to milk the system?
And if you omit something, you're going to get an automatic letter back from the Department of Human Services that says you have 10 days to comply, and in 10 days, if you don't provide those, you're automatically denied.
My perception is that the system, whoever that is out there, thinks I'm cheating.
Mr. System.
Mr. System thinks I'm cheating. That Mr. System is out to, that I have to prove that I'm not cheating. I have to prove that I'm desperate. I have to prove that I'm incompetent. And I have to pull myself up by my bootstraps which is a physical impossibility, by the way.
Yeah.
And just suck it in and pretend things are normal.
Well, if DHS is so suspicious, welfare fraud must be an enormous problem, right?
Do I think it is a major, major problem? Absolutely not. I mean, I can talk to you about my 39 years of experience and the number of people who were prosecuted or the number of people who were denied assistance based upon cheating. It is a very small number of the hundreds and hundreds of thousands of people that we worked with over a long period of time. It is a very small number. We keep forgetting over and over and over again that the greatest number of people who are in poverty are children. And tell me what those children are doing that has created their situation. And then the next thing people will say when I say that is, well, their parents are not being responsible. They're not taking care of those children. You know, in many instances, they're doing the best that they can.
The dangerous aspect about this attitude is that it affects people. Folks in these situations are more vulnerable to despair and depression, to the point where they may start blaming themselves.
Hope is a risk for folks in this situation. So they've been beat down, things haven't gone their way over and over again.
You know, I tend to blame myself rather than other people. I assume other people have it together more than I do.
They're afraid to hope, they're afraid to be positive. It's just much more safe to remain in that frame of mind that things are going to go wrong.
Depression is just something that is a fact of life with me.
We know that education and training are the key to getting out of poverty, but something's got to drive you to that.
It doesn't help that there is less and less individual attention in DHS cases. I myself received several automatically generated letters threatening to terminate my DHS assistance based on irrelevant data. They referenced supposedly unreported income that I earned about a year before applying. When I called my case manager, I was told that the letters were sent automatically by a third party and that she herself had no control over them, even though her name and number were at the top. That was when my case manager called me back, of course. The last time I had an issue, nobody called me back. Miscommunications like this are a panic attack when you're relying on this assistance to get by.
This was about my son, but they were terminating his Medicaid.
Why was that?
Well, that's what I called the case managers. Questions, you know, call the case manager. Okay, I called him up and I'm saying, okay, I got this letter, and he says, I don't know what you're talking about. So he said, well, let me do a little research. And then, you know, 3 or 4 days later, he called up and he says, okay, I found your son's file. You know, he was assigned to me, no one told me. You know, it was in the back of a file cabinet.
So it just switched case managers without warning, and evidently without warning the case manager?
Without telling the case manager, yeah. Because he's autistic, it was automatic that he had Medicaid. And then I think they changed the rules to, you know, everybody had to have a face-to-face interview. But they terminated him without notifying, I mean, that
Anybody.
without even telling the case manager that he had this case.
And it's not necessarily the fault of the caseworkers.
I think that what happens is that you have a number of well-meaning people who work for the Department of Human Services, who work there because they really want to help people. They want to make a difference in this world. But they have so many cases. They have these huge caseloads because, I guess to put it frankly, the Department of Human Services in Michigan has been under a lot of pressure in the area of child welfare. So most of the resources have gone into the area of child welfare. to the neglect of resources to help people that determine eligibility for public assistance programs. So workers have these tremendous caseloads, they have high expectations, they have standards of promptness, and so they're under this constant pressure. They have hundreds of phone calls that come in every day, changes that they need to make. So I don't think there's a purposeful disconnect. I think that they are so overwhelmed and there doesn't seem to be any concern at the level of the administration to make a difference.
So how does society's safety net fall so low in priority? Well, one possible explanation is that we're looking at all the wrong numbers.
You know, one of the things that is interesting is that this administration prides itself in the fact that there has been a significant decrease in the number of people on public assistance. At the same time that those numbers are dropping, in Michigan we have more people who are living at or below poverty than we have ever had in the past 52 years. Now, does that make sense to you? Does it make sense that we would have more people who are eligible and less people getting help?
I quit trying.
Yeah?
Yeah. Yeah, I just quit trying.
All the hurdles put in front of you were just too much? You just, not worth it?
Yeah, yeah. And I just was overwhelmed by it. I just walked away from it.
We shouldn't be measuring who we're cutting off. We should be measuring who we're not helping. Looking at the people who are being denied and finding out what is wrong with our system, that people who need help are not getting it.
So what can we do? Well, if any of this has inspired you to action, you can contact our leaders in Lansing and let them know what you think about how DHS works. Do you think we should change it? Let them know. On a local level, you can get involved with nonprofits like HelpLink and Bacon. And of course, you can share what you learned about assistance programs with your friends and family. Thanks for watching.